My ex-wife fabricated abuse allegations to take full custody of our kids. But her text to her sister gave me everything in court. My ex-wife Heather told the court I was violent and dangerous. She said I threw things at the kids. She said I screamed at them until they cried. She said they were terrified of me and would hide when I came home from work. None of it was true, but she cried so convincingly on the stand that even I almost believed her. The judge granted her temporary full custody immediately. I got supervised visits only, 2 hours every other Saturday at a facility where someone watched me play with my own children like I was some kind of criminal. Heather had been planning this for months. She started taking the kids to a therapist who specialized in abuse cases, telling the therapist I was unstable. She'd coach them before each session. Tell her about the time Daddy got angry. My son Jake was 8, and my daughter Lily was 6. They didn't understand what was happening. They just knew Mommy said they had to talk to the nice lady about their feelings. Heather would create situations to support her story. She'd text me inflammatory messages trying to get me to respond angrily so she could screenshot my replies. When I didn't take the bait, she'd claim I was harassing her with phone calls even though I never called. She filed 3 restraining orders based on completely fabricated incidents. She said I followed her to the grocery store when I was actually at work with 20 witnesses. She said I vandalized her car when I was in another state at a conference. She said I sent threatening emails from anonymous accounts that she probably sent to herself. Each allegation made me look worse to the court. Each restraining order made it harder to see my kids. The supervised visits were torture. Jake would ask why I couldn't come home and I couldn't explain, because the supervisor would report anything negative I said about Heather. Lily would cry when visits ended and Heather would tell the supervisor it was because she was scared to be alone with me, not because she missed me. Heather was so confident she'd won. She started telling everyone our kids were finally safe. She posted on social media about being a survivor and protecting her babies. She got sympathy from everyone. People I'd known for years stopped talking to me. I lost friends, lost work connections, lost everything because who wants to associate with an alleged child abuser? My lawyer kept telling me to be patient, that truth would come out. But Heather had manufactured so much evidence and I had no way to prove a negative. How do you prove you didn't do something when someone says you did it behind closed doors? Then Heather made one mistake. She got cocky. During our last custody hearing, she brought her sister Megan as a character witness. Megan testified about all the times she'd seen me lose my temper, how the kids would flinch when I moved too fast, how Heather was just trying to protect them. She cried on the stand too. Must run in the family. But Megan had recently gone through her own divorce and her ex-husband Tony reached out to me. He said Megan was just as manipulative as Heather, and he had something I needed to see. During their divorce proceedings, Tony had legally obtained years of text messages between Megan and Heather. They'd been submitted as evidence in their case but sealed after the divorce was finalized. Tony's lawyer found a loophole that allowed them to be shared with another party, if relevant to ongoing litigation. The texts were unbelievable. Heather laying out her entire plan. I need Jake to say he's scared of Jules. Can you help me practice with him? The therapist is buying everything. She's already writing a report about emotional abuse. Jules is so stupid he doesn't even know what's coming. Once I get full custody, I'm moving to Colorado with Brian. Brian was her personal trainer who she'd been seeing for a year. The texts went on and on. Megan is giving her advice on what to say. Cry when you mention the kids. Judges always believe mothers. Say he drinks, even if he doesn't. Say you've smelled alcohol. Keep filing restraining orders. Even if they don't stick, they'll be on record. There was even a text where Heather admitted she was lying. Obviously, Jules never touched them, but the court doesn't know that. I feel bad, but Brian says this is the only way we can start fresh. The kids will forget about Jules eventually. My lawyer submitted everything to the court immediately. The judge was furious. She slammed her gavel on the bench and the sound echoed through the courtroom like a gunshot. Everyone froze. Heather's face went from confident to white in about 2 seconds. Megan looked confused at first. Then I saw the moment she understood what was happening. Her eyes got wide and she grabbed the edge of her seat. Tyrone's hand squeezed my shoulder so hard it hurt, but I didn't care because I could feel him shaking with excitement next to me. The judge's voice cut through the silence, sharp and angry. She told both lawyers to meet her in chambers immediately, not in 5 minutes or after a break, but right now. Lucian stood up looking like he didn't know what hit him. Tyrone practically jumped out of his seat. I started to stand too, but Tyrone put his hand on my shoulder and told me to wait here. The bailiff opened the door to the judge's chambers and all 3 of them disappeared inside. The courtroom stayed completely silent. Nobody moved. Heather sat frozen in her chair staring at the table in front of her. Megan kept looking at Heather like she wanted to say something but couldn't. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. This was it. This was actually happening. The door to chambers stayed closed for what felt like forever, but was probably only a few minutes. Through the door, I could hear the judge's voice getting louder, but couldn't make out the words. Heather started crying quietly. Not the loud, dramatic crying from her testimony, but small, scared sounds. Megan reached over and grabbed her hand, but Heather pulled away. Inside chambers, Nadine was scrolling through the text messages on her computer screen, her face getting darker with each one she read. She turned to Lucian and asked him point blank if he knew his client had committed perjury before today. Her voice was ice cold. Lucian looked genuinely shocked as he leaned forward to read the messages for the first time. His face went pale. He started shaking his head, and I could see him physically moving his chair away from the situation. He asked the judge for time to consult with Heather before proceeding. Nadine didn't even hesitate. She said no. She told him they were going back into the courtroom right now, and this was going on the record immediately. Tyrone looked at me, and I could see he was trying not to smile. Lucian gathered his papers with shaking hands. The door opened, and they filed back in. Lucian looked like a different person than the confident lawyer who'd been defending Heather all morning. The judge sat down and told the court reporter to go back on the record. She said she was formally entering the text message evidence provided by Tony into the case file. Then she started reading the messages out loud. The courtroom was dead silent except for her voice. She read the one where Heather told Megan she needed Jake to say he was scared of me and asked if Megan could help practice with him. She read the one about the therapist buying everything. She read the one where Heather called me stupid and said I didn't know what was coming. With each message, Heather seemed to shrink smaller in her chair. Her lawyer wasn't even looking at her anymore. He was staring at his notepad like he wished he could disappear. The judge read the message about moving to Colorado with Brian. She read the ones where Megan coached Heather on what to say in court. Then she read the worst one. And the one where Heather admitted flat out that I never touched the kids, but the court didn't know that. The one where she said she felt bad. But Brian told her it was the only way. Several people in the courtroom gasped. I heard someone behind me whisper, "Oh my God." Nadine looked directly at Heather and asked her straight out if she fabricated the abuse allegations against me. Heather's voice came out small and shaky. She said the texts were taken out of context and didn't mean what they looked like. The judge's expression got even harder. She cut Heather off mid-sentence and told her that continued lying would result in immediate contempt charges and possible jail time. She said she'd read enough false testimony today and wouldn't tolerate another word of it. She asked Heather again, and this time her voice had an edge that made it clear this was the last chance. Did you or did you not fabricate allegations of abuse against your ex-husband? The courtroom felt like it was holding its breath. Heather opened her mouth, but nothing came out at first. Then she started crying for real. Not the practiced tears from earlier, but ugly, desperate sobbing. She said yes through the tears. She said she made it all up. She said she wanted to start fresh with Brian in Colorado, and thought this was the only way to make it happen fast. The judge's face looked like stone. She said she was ordering the immediate suspension of all 3 restraining orders against me. She said those orders were based on fabricated evidence and perjured testimony and had no legal standing. Then she said she was granting me temporary full custody of Jake and Lily effective immediately. Heather would be reduced to supervised visitation only, pending further investigation into the extent of the fraud and the damage done to the children. My hands started shaking. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Tyrone squeezed my shoulder again. Heather was sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. Her lawyer was writing notes frantically, probably trying to figure out how to get himself out of this disaster. Megan had gone completely still in her seat. The judge wasn't done. She told the bailiff to make note that custody transfer would happen today, and that law enforcement would supervise if necessary to ensure compliance. Megan slowly started to stand up like she was going to slip out of the courtroom while everyone was focused on Heather. She made it about 3 steps toward the door before the judge's voice stopped her cold. Nadine told her to return to her seat immediately. Megan froze. The bailiff moved to stand near the door, blocking the exit. Megan turned around and walked back to her seat like she was walking to her own execution. Her face had gone gray. The judge told her she wasn't going anywhere because she had some questions about the testimony Megan gave earlier today. Megan sat down, and I could see her hands trembling as she gripped the edge of the table in front of her. The court reporter's fingers flew over the keys as the judge spoke. This was really happening. Both of them were going down. Nadine asked Megan directly about her knowledge of Heather's plan. She asked if Megan knew the allegations were false when she testified earlier today. Megan tried to claim she was just supporting her sister and didn't really know what was true or not. The judge didn't buy it for a second. She pulled up the text messages on her screen again and started reading the ones where Megan actively coached Heather on courtroom strategy. The message about crying when mentioning the kids because judges always believe mothers. The message about claiming I drank even though I didn't. The message about filing multiple restraining orders so they'd be on record even if they didn't stick. With each message, Megan's face got paler. The judge asked her again if she knew the allegations were false. Megan's voice came out barely above a whisper. She said yes. She said she knew. The judge asked why she testified anyway. Megan said she was trying to help her sister. The judge told her that wasn't help. That was conspiracy to commit fraud. Nadine said she was referring both Heather and Megan to the district attorney's office for potential criminal charges. She listed them out: perjury, conspiracy to commit fraud, making false statements to the court. She said the DA would review the evidence and determine what charges to file. Both Heather and Megan looked like they might pass out. Then the judge said she was ordering a complete psychological evaluation of Jake and Lily by an independent therapist. She said she needed to assess the damage from what she called parental alienation and coaching. She said the children had been used as weapons in a custody dispute and deserved professional support to recover from it. She appointed someone named Bella Fitzpatrick to conduct the evaluation. The judge said Bella would report back to the court within 3 weeks with her findings and recommendations. My chest felt tight. I can't stop shaking as we leave the courtroom. My legs feel weird, like they might give out. Tyrone has his hand on my shoulder, guiding me toward the clerk's office. He's talking, but I'm only catching every third word. Something about procedures. Something about coordination. Something about Heather still having physical custody right this second, even though the judge just gave them to me. That last part cuts through the fog in my head. I stop walking and turn to look at him. He explains that we need paperwork from the clerk before I can actually go get Jake and Lily. The court order has to be official. There's a process. Of course there's a process. There's always a process. We wait in line at the clerk's window for what feels like forever. The woman behind the glass is typing slowly, printing documents, stamping things. She doesn't seem to understand that every minute I'm standing here is another minute my kids are still at Heather's house thinking their mom won. Tyrone fills out forms. I sign where he points. The clerk makes copies. Finally, she hands us a folder with the official custody order inside. Tyrone calls someone while we walk to the parking lot. A police officer who can supervise the pickup. He says it's standard procedure when there's been conflict. The officer agrees to meet us at Heather's address in 90 minutes. I drive home first to grab some bags for the kids' stuff. My apartment feels strange, like I'm seeing it for the first time. There's the couch where I've spent so many nights unable to sleep. There's the kitchen table where I've eaten alone for months. In a few hours, Jake and Lily will be here. They'll actually be here. I find 2 duffel bags in my closet and throw them in the car. The drive to Heather's house takes 20 minutes but feels like 20 seconds. The police car is already parked on the street when I pull up. The officer is a woman, maybe 40, with her hair pulled back tight. She introduces herself and asks to see the custody order. She reads it carefully, then nods. She tells me she'll stay close but let me handle the conversation unless things get difficult. I walk up to the front door of the house I used to live in. My hand is shaking when I ring the doorbell. I can hear Jake and Lily inside, their voices high and excited about something. Then footsteps. The door opens and Heather is standing there. She looks terrible. Her eyes are red and swollen. Her hair is messy. She's wearing sweatpants and an old shirt. When she sees me, her face crumples, but she doesn't cry. She just stands there. I can hear the kids louder now. They're in the living room playing some game. Heather looks past me at the police officer standing on the sidewalk, then back at me. She doesn't say anything. I hold up the custody order, but I don't think she can even focus on it. I tell her I'm here to pick up Jake and Lily. My voice comes out steadier than I expected. She nods slowly and steps back from the door. I walk inside and the smell hits me. It's the smell of the house. Our house. Where we lived together before everything fell apart. Jake sees me first. He's on the floor with toy cars spread around him. His face lights up and he jumps to his feet. Lily is on the couch with a coloring book. She drops her crayon and runs over. They're both talking at once, asking why I'm here, asking if we're going somewhere. I kneel down so I'm at their level. I tell them they're going to come stay with me for a while. Lily's smile gets even bigger. She asks if mommy is coming too. The question makes my chest hurt. I keep my voice calm. I tell her it's going to be just the 3 of us for now. We can talk more when we get to my place. Jake looks confused. He glances back at Heather, who's standing in the hallway now. He asks if we're going right now. I nod. I tell them we need to pack some of their clothes and toys. Lily runs toward her room, but Jake stays put. He's looking between me and his mother, trying to figure out what's happening. What changed? Heather opens her mouth like she's about to say something. The police officer appears in the doorway. She reminds Heather that any communication needs to go through attorneys. Heather closes her mouth. Her hands are clenched at her sides. Jake finally moves, following his sister down the hall. I grab the duffel bags from where I dropped them by the door and head to their rooms. Lily is pulling clothes out of her dresser, not folding anything, just stuffing them into a pile. I help her sort through what she needs. Underwear, socks, shirts, pants, her favorite stuffed elephant that she sleeps with. Jake is more methodical. He's choosing specific shirts, specific pants. He packs his handheld game system and the charger. Some books. The action figures he plays with most. We fill both bags. Heather watches from the hallway the whole time. She's crying now, but it's silent. Tears just running down her face. Part of me feels good seeing her like this. She did this to herself. She lied and manipulated and tried to take everything from me. But mostly I just want to get my kids out of here. I want to get them somewhere safe where nobody is coaching them or using them or making them say things that aren't true. We carry the bags to the front door. Lily is chattering about showing me her new dance moves she learned. Jake is quiet. At the door, I turn back to Heather one last time. She's standing in the hallway still. Her arms are wrapped around herself. She looks small. Broken. I don't say anything. There's nothing to say. We walk out to my car and I load the bags in the trunk. The police officer gives me a nod and heads back to her car. Jake and Lily climb into the back seat. I buckle Lily's seatbelt and Jake does his own. As I'm pulling away from the curb, I glance in the rearview mirror. Heather is standing in the doorway watching us leave. Then we turn the corner and she's gone. That night, Maurice shows up at my apartment with shopping bags. He brought new sheets for the kids' beds, the kind with cartoon characters they like. New pillows. A lamp shaped like a rocket ship for Jake's side of the room. A nightlight that projects stars on the ceiling for Lily. He helps me make up their beds while they explore the apartment. They keep opening cabinets and closets, checking out everything like they've never been here before. Which I guess they haven't. Not really. Not to stay. Maurice is talking the whole time, keeping things light. He tells Jake about a soccer league that's starting next month. He asks Lily about her favorite color so he knows what kind of art supplies to bring next time. The kids warm up to him fast. He's good with them. Better than I am right now. I keep freezing up, not sure what to say or how to act. Like I'm afraid of doing something wrong. Bedtime comes too fast. Lily wants me to read her a story, but we don't have any of her books here yet. I make one up about a princess who builds a rocket ship. She giggles at the silly parts. When I tuck her in, she grabs my hand. She asks if I'm still angry like Mommy said I was. The question makes my throat tight. I sit on the edge of her bed and tell her I was never angry at her or Jake. Never. Sometimes adults make mistakes that hurt people they love. But I love her and Jake more than anything in the world. She seems satisfied with that answer. She asks if I'll stay until she falls asleep. I tell her, of course. I sit there holding her hand while her breathing gets slower. The star nightlight Maurice brought makes little dots of light move across the walls. Jake is in his bed on the other side of the room, but he's not asleep. I can tell by his breathing. When I'm sure Lily is out, I move over to Jake's bed. He's staring at the ceiling. He asks quietly if we're going to see Mommy again. I tell him yes. We'll figure out the details with the judge, but yes. He's quiet for a long time. Then he asks if Mommy is in trouble. I don't know how to answer that. I settle for telling him that Mommy made some choices that weren't good. Now some things have to change. But we'll get through it together. He rolls over to face the wall. I stay there for a while longer, listening to both kids breathe. Maurice is in the living room when I come out. I don't know. He's cleaned up the packaging from all the stuff he brought. Made himself at home on my couch. He asks how I'm holding up. I tell him I don't know. It doesn't feel real yet. He tells me it will. Give it time. We sit there not talking for a while. Finally, he heads out, telling me to call if I need anything. Anything at all. After he leaves, I check on the kids one more time. Both sleeping. I stand in the doorway of their room for a long time just watching them. My kids. In my apartment. Finally. The next morning, I call my boss before the kids wake up. I explain I need family leave to handle the custody transition. He doesn't ask many questions. Just tells me to take the time I need. My company has been good through all of this. They never treated me differently when the allegations were flying around. I'm grateful for that. Jake wakes up first. He wanders into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. I make pancakes. Lily appears a few minutes later, dragging her stuffed elephant. They eat quietly. I can tell they're both processing everything. After breakfast, my phone rings. It's Tyrone. He wants to schedule a meeting to talk about next steps. I tell him the kids just got here and I need a few days. He understands, but he explains some things anyway. The emergency hearing was a win, but it's not the end. There's still a formal custody modification process. Court dates, documentation, plus the district attorney is opening a criminal investigation into Heather's perjury. They might want to talk to me. Give a statement. I tell him okay. We'll figure it out. Right now, I just need to focus on Jake and Lily. He agrees and says he'll call back in a few days. After I hang up, Lily asks if we can go to the park. The question catches me off guard. Such a normal kid thing to want. We haven't done normal things in so long. I tell her yes. We can go to the park. Jake wants to bring his soccer ball. We spend the rest of the morning outside. The kids play on the swings and the slide. Jake kicks his ball around. I sit on a bench and watch them. They look happy. Really happy. Not the forced happiness from supervised visits. Not the careful happiness they showed around Heather. Just regular kid happiness. A woman at the park recognizes me. I can see it in her face when she looks over. She was one of Heather's friends. Someone who believed every word of the allegations. She grabs her kid's hand and leaves quickly, throwing looks back at me. I don't care. Let her think whatever she wants. My kids are here with me, and that's all that matters. I get a call from Tyrone 3 days later telling me Judge Caruso wants to see me in her chambers. She's ordering a full evaluation of Jake and Lily by a specialist in parental alienation cases. The therapist's name is Bella Fitzpatrick, and she works with kids who've been coached or manipulated during custody battles. The first session is scheduled for Friday afternoon, which gives me exactly 3 days to prepare the kids. Jake asks me that night what another therapist wants to talk about. I can see the worry in his face because he remembers all those sessions with Heather's doctor where he had to repeat the stories Mommy practiced with him. I tell him this therapist is different. She just wants to hear about his real feelings and memories, not what anyone told him to say. Lily doesn't understand why she needs to talk to someone new. She asks if she did something wrong. I pull her onto my lap and explain that the judge wants to make sure both of them are okay after everything that happened. The therapist is there to help them feel better, not to make them say things they don't want to say. Neither of them looks convinced, but they agree to go. Thursday morning, I drive them to the school to meet with the principal. I need to explain the custody change officially so the school knows I'm the primary parent now, and Heather can't pick them up without permission. The secretary at the front desk sees me walk in with Jake and Lily, and her face goes red. She's one of the people who treated me like garbage when Heather's allegations were public. She won't make eye contact as she buzzes us through to the principal's office. Principal Anderson stands up when we enter and shakes my hand. He tells Jake and Lily to wait in the outer office with some books while we talk. Once they're gone, he apologizes. He says he should have questioned things more instead of just believing what Heather claimed. Several teachers had doubts because Jake and Lily never showed signs of fear around me during pickup and drop-off. but the school policy is to take all abuse allegations seriously. I tell him I understand, but it still hurt to be treated like a monster by people who'd known me for years. He nods and says he'll send an email to all staff explaining the custody situation and making sure everyone knows the truth. When we leave, 2 teachers in the hallway look embarrassed when they see me. One of them mouths an apology. I just nod and keep walking with my kids. That afternoon, my phone rings while Jake and Lily are doing homework at the kitchen table. The caller ID shows a number I recognize even though I haven't seen it in months. Heather's mother, Freya. I step into my bedroom and answer. She's crying before she even says hello. She tells me she had no idea Heather was lying about everything. She believed her daughter because what mother wouldn't believe her own child when she says she's protecting her grandchildren? But then Megan told her about the texts and the whole conspiracy, and Freya says she feels sick about what Heather did to me and to Jake and Lily. She's ashamed of her daughter. She keeps apologizing over and over until I finally tell her it's okay. I know she didn't know. She asks if she can still see her grandchildren. I think about it for a minute. Freya was always good to Jake and Lily, and they love their grandmother. I tell her yes, but the visits need to be at my apartment where I can supervise for now. She agrees immediately and asks if she can come tomorrow. I tell her tomorrow works. Freya shows up the next afternoon carrying a tin of homemade chocolate chip cookies. Jake and Lily run to her when they see her at the door, and she drops to her knees and hugs them both while crying. She tells them she missed them so much and she's so sorry for everything. The kids don't really understand what she's apologizing for, but they hug her back. We sit in the living room and Freya asks them about school and their friends and what they've been doing. She doesn't mention Heather at first, but then Lily asks where Mommy is and why Grandma came to see them here instead of at Mommy's house. Freya looks at me and I nod. She takes a breath and tells Lily that Mommy made some bad choices. She hurt people with lies and now she needs to fix those mistakes before she can spend time with them again. Jake asks if Mommy is in trouble. Freya says yes, Mommy is in trouble. But sometimes people we love do things that are wrong, and we have to let them face the consequences. Her honesty helps. I've been dancing around the truth with vague explanations because I didn't want to make Heather look bad to the kids. But Freya's straightforward approach seems to make more sense to them than my careful wording. Friday afternoon, I take Jake and Lily to Bella Fitzpatrick's office for their evaluations. The waiting room has toys and books like a pediatrician's office. Bella comes out to meet us and she's younger than I expected, maybe early 30s, with a calm way of talking that immediately puts the kids at ease. She takes Jake back first while Lily and I wait. They're gone for almost an hour. When Jake comes back out, he looks tired but not upset. Bella asks if Lily is ready, and Lily grabs my hand before following Bella down the hallway. Jake won't tell me what they talked about. He just says Bella asked him questions about before Mommy and I split up and about the other therapist he used to see. I don't push him for details. Lily's session lasts about 45 minutes. When she comes out, she's carrying a stuffed bear that Bella apparently gave her. Bella tells me she'll write up her preliminary findings and submit them to Judge Caruso within the week. She asks if I can bring the kids back next Friday for follow-up sessions. I agree. On the drive home, Lily tells me Bella asked her about fun things we used to do together. She told Bella about the time we went to the zoo and I let her feed the giraffes. She told her about movie nights when we'd make popcorn and watch cartoons. She said Bella seemed happy to hear about those memories. Jake stays quiet in the back seat. The following Wednesday, Tyrone calls to tell me Bella submitted her report to the court. He read it and says it's very favorable. Bella documented signs of coaching in both kids. Jake told her about Heather practicing answers with him before therapy appointments. He said he always felt confused because the things Mommy wanted him to say didn't match what really happened. Lily described happy memories of living with me that completely contradict Heather's abuse claims. Bella's professional opinion is that both children show clear signs of parental alienation and need continued therapy to process the manipulation. She's recommending I keep primary custody and that Jake and Lily continue seeing her regularly to rebuild their relationship with me and work through the confusion Heather created. That same afternoon, Tyrone calls again with different news. The district attorney's office contacted him about the criminal investigation into Heather and Megan. They're building cases for perjury and conspiracy to commit fraud. They want me to provide a victim impact statement describing how the false allegations affected my life. Tyrone explains that victim impact statements are usually used in sentencing, but in this case, the DA wants to document the full scope of damage for the prosecution. He emails me a template and tells me to take my time writing it. The statement is due in 2 weeks. I sit down that night after the kids are asleep and try to write it. The template has sections for emotional impact, financial impact, and social impact. I start with the supervised visits. I describe watching my own children through a window while a stranger took notes on every interaction. I describe Jake asking why he couldn't come home and not being able to explain, because anything negative about Heather would be reported. I describe Lily crying when visits ended, and Heather twisting that into evidence that Lily was scared of me. I write about the social isolation. Friends who disappeared overnight because who wants to associate with an alleged child abuser. Co-workers who stopped inviting me to lunch. Neighbors who crossed the street when they saw me coming. I write about the destroyed friendships, the damaged professional reputation, the constant anxiety of wondering if people believed I hurt my kids. I write about the financial cost of legal fees and the supervised visitation facility. I write about the trauma of watching Heather turn Jake and Lily against me through coaching and manipulation. I write about the nights I couldn't sleep, wondering if I'd ever get my children back. By the time I finish the first draft, it's after midnight and I've filled 6 pages. I save the document and close my laptop. My hands are shaking. I spend the next morning revising the statement, trying to make it less raw and more factual. Maurice shows up around 11 with coffee and breakfast sandwiches. He reads through what I wrote and nods slowly. He tells me it's powerful, but I need to be careful not to sound like I'm looking for revenge. The court wants to understand the damage, not hear me wish bad things on Heather. I rewrite sections where my anger shows through too much. I describe the supervised visits without calling Heather names. I explain the social isolation without saying I hope everyone who abandoned me feels terrible. Maurice reminds me that getting justice means rebuilding my life with Jake and Lily, not tearing down Heather's. He's right, even though part of me wants her to suffer the way I did. I save the final version and email it to Tyrone. 2 weeks pass and the routine with Jake and Lily starts feeling normal. They do homework at the kitchen table while I make dinner. We watch shows together before bed. Lily asks fewer questions about when things will change. Jake stops looking at the door like he expects someone to take him away. Tyrone calls on a Tuesday to tell me Judge Caruso scheduled a follow-up hearing for Friday morning. Bella submitted her preliminary report, and the judge wants to review it with both parties present. Heather will be there with her new attorney since Lucian withdrew from the case after the text messages came out. I arrange for Maurice to stay with the kids during the hearing. Friday morning, I put on the same suit I wore to the emergency hearing. My hands shake while I tie my tie. I drive to the courthouse and meet Tyrone in the lobby. He tells me Bella's report is very favorable and recommends I keep primary custody. Heather's new lawyer is someone named Richard Sandoval who specializes in defending difficult cases. Tyrone says Sandoval is good, but he doesn't have much to work with given the evidence. We enter the courtroom and I see Heather sitting with Sandoval at the other table. She looks smaller than I remember, like the past 2 weeks aged her. She doesn't make eye contact when I sit down. Judge Caruso enters and everyone stands. She reviews Bella's report on her computer screen before addressing the courtroom. Sandoval stands and immediately asks to speak. He argues that Heather deserves a chance to rebuild her relationship with the children and requests immediate restoration of some custody rights. Judge Caruso cuts him off before he finishes. She says she's read Bella's report, which documents clear signs of coaching in both children. She cites specific examples from Jake's sessions where he described practicing answers with his mother. The judge orders continued supervised visitation for Heather with therapeutic monitoring. Sandoval tries to object, but Judge Caruso raises her hand. She says Heather will also undergo a complete psychological evaluation to assess her fitness for any future custody. Sandoval objects again, claiming it's excessive. Judge Caruso leans forward and her voice gets sharp. She says fabricating abuse allegations and coaching children to lie demonstrates serious judgment problems that must be addressed before any custody discussion happens. She tells Sandoval his client is lucky she's not in jail right now, and he should focus on compliance rather than arguments. Heather starts crying quietly. Sandoval sits down looking defeated. Judge Caruso sets a review date for 6 weeks from now after Heather completes the evaluation. She dismisses everyone and I feel the tension drain from my shoulders. Outside the courtroom, I see Brian standing near the windows. He's wearing gym clothes and looks uncomfortable. When he sees me, he shifts his weight and looks away. I realize he probably didn't know everything Heather did to make their Colorado plan work. He probably thought the custody case was legitimate. Now he knows his girlfriend destroyed her family with lies so they could move away together. I don't say anything to him. I just walk past toward the exit. Tyrone catches up with me in the parking lot. He tells me Jacqueline Hooper wants to meet next week to discuss the kids' adjustment. She's the guardian ad litem assigned to represent Jake and Lily's interests in court. Tyrone says Jacqueline has been impressed with how I've handled the transition, and she's planning to recommend my temporary custody become permanent. The meeting happens on Wednesday at Jacqueline's office downtown. She's a woman in her 50s with gray hair and kind eyes. She asks detailed questions about Jake and Lily's daily routine, their schoolwork, their emotional state. I tell her about homework at the kitchen table and movie nights, and how Lily stopped asking when things would change. Jacqueline takes notes and nods. She says both children are clearly thriving in my care, and she sees no reason to disrupt that stability. She'll submit her recommendation to Judge Caruso before the next hearing. That evening, Jake comes into the kitchen while I'm cleaning up after dinner. He stands near the counter and asks if we can talk. I dry my hands and sit at the table. He sits across from me and stares at his hands. He tells me the therapy sessions with Heather's doctor always felt wrong. His mom would practice answers with him before each appointment, telling him what to say about me. He knew the things she wanted him to say weren't true, but he was scared of disappointing her. He felt guilty about lying but didn't know how to stop once it started. I tell him none of this was his fault. He was a kid trying to make his mom happy. He starts crying and I move around the table to hug him. He says he's sorry for saying those things about me. I tell him I know he didn't mean them and I never stopped loving him. We sit there for a while until he calms down. Later that night, Lily wakes up screaming. I run to her room and find her sitting up in bed crying. She says she had a nightmare about the supervised visitation place. She asks if she has to go back there. I sit on her bed and smooth her hair back. I explain that place was for when we were figuring things out. Now she lives with me, so we don't need it anymore. She asks if I promise, and I promise. She falls back asleep holding my hand. 3 weeks pass and Tyrone calls about Heather's first visit since gaining custody. Judge Caruso approved supervised visitation at a neutral location with Bella present to observe and help Heather understand appropriate boundaries. I drive Jake and Lily to a family counseling center on Saturday morning. Bella meets us in the lobby and takes us to a room with toys and comfortable chairs. Heather arrives 10 minutes later. She looks nervous when she sees the kids. Jake stays close to me, but Lily runs over and hugs her. Heather holds her and starts crying. Bella gently reminds Heather to focus on the children's experience, not her own emotions. We all sit down and Bella facilitates the conversation. Heather tries to explain to Jake and Lily why she did what she did. She talks about being scared and making bad choices and wanting a fresh start. The words sound hollow even as she says them. Jake asks her directly why she lied about Dad. Heather starts making excuses about being confused and stressed. Bella interrupts and redirects her. She tells Heather the children need to hear about their feelings, not justifications for her actions. Heather stops and takes a breath. She asks Jake how he felt during the therapy sessions. He tells her he felt scared and confused. She asks Lily if she missed Daddy during the supervised visits. Lily nods and says she cried every time. Heather listens and cries more, but this time she doesn't make it about herself. The visit lasts 40 minutes but feels like hours. Heather tries to ask Lily about school but can't seem to find the right words. Lily answers in short sentences and keeps looking at me for reassurance. Jake sits with his arms crossed and stares at the floor. Heather attempts to explain that she made mistakes and felt confused about what was best. Her voice shakes and the words come out wrong. She says she thought she was protecting them, but realizes now she was hurting everyone. Jake lifts his head and looks directly at his mother. He asks why she lied about Dad if she was trying to protect them. Heather's face crumples and she starts crying again. She opens her mouth but nothing comes out except sobs. Bella leans forward and asks Heather to take a breath and try to answer Jake's question honestly. Heather wipes her eyes and says she doesn't know how to explain it in a way that makes sense. She says she was scared and angry and made terrible choices. Jake asks what she was scared of if Dad never hurt them. Heather looks at me and then back at Jake. She admits she wasn't scared of me hurting them physically. She was scared of being alone and starting over without help. The truth hangs in the air and even Lily seems to understand that Mommy did something really bad for selfish reasons. The rest of the visit passes in uncomfortable silence. Heather tries to hug both kids before we leave, but Jake steps back. Lily hugs her quickly and then takes my hand. After we walk the kids to my car and get them settled with tablets for the drive home, Bella asks me to stay for a few minutes. We stand in the parking lot near her vehicle and she pulls out a notepad. She tells me the visit revealed important information about where Heather is emotionally. Heather shows signs of genuine guilt, but struggles to separate remorse from self-pity. She keeps making the conversation about her own pain instead of acknowledging what she put the children through. Bella recommends we continue supervised visits with her present to help Heather learn appropriate boundaries. She warns me that rebuilding trust between Heather and the kids will take months at minimum, possibly years. Jake especially seems deeply hurt by the betrayal and needs time to process his anger. Lily is younger and more willing to forgive, but even she pulled away when Heather tried to make excuses. Bella says she'll submit a report to the judge recommending continued therapeutic oversight for any contact between Heather and the children. I thank her for her help and drive home with Jake and Lily. Neither kid mentions the visit and I don't push them to talk about it. 3 days later, Tyrone calls with news from the district attorney's office. They formally charged Heather with 3 counts of perjury for her false testimony about abuse allegations. They also charged her with 1 count of conspiracy to commit fraud for the coordinated scheme to gain custody through lies. Megan received 2 counts of perjury for her false testimony as a character witness. Both women face potential jail time, though Tyrone says first offenders usually get probation and community service. The charges will be part of the public record, which means Heather's lies are now officially documented. Tyrone explains this strengthens our position in the final custody hearing because the judge can reference the criminal charges when making her decision. I feel relieved that the legal system is taking the false allegations seriously, but also worried about how this affects Jake and Lily. Their mother might go to jail, and that's a heavy thing for kids to process. That same week, Freya calls me crying. She tells me Heather's relationship with Brian fell apart completely. The criminal charges and custody loss put too much pressure on their plans. Brian decided he couldn't handle the situation and moved to Colorado alone without Heather. Freya says Heather is destroyed by his abandonment, and finally understands he never really cared about her or the kids. He just wanted a fresh start somewhere new, and Heather was supposed to be part of that package. Now that the package includes legal problems and supervised visitation, Brian wants nothing to do with her. Freya sounds angry when she talks about Brian. She calls him a coward who encouraged Heather to destroy her family, and then ran away when consequences arrived. I don't say much because I'm still processing everything. Part of me feels vindicated that Heather lost what she was willing to sacrifice her kids for. Another part feels sad that Jake and Lily's mother is going through this pain, even though she brought it on herself. Freya asks if the kids can visit her this weekend, and I agree. She's been honest and supportive through everything and deserves time with her grandchildren. The next morning, Tony calls to check how things are going with the custody case. I fill him in on the emergency hearing, the custody change, and the criminal charges against Heather and Megan. Tony sounds satisfied when I describe how the text messages he provided were used in court. He tells me that exposing Megan's manipulation in his own divorce gave him closure he didn't expect. Helping me do the same thing felt like turning his pain into something useful. He says watching someone else escape a toxic situation using the same evidence that freed him makes everything he went through feel worthwhile. His voice gets emotional when he talks about how manipulative people count on their victims staying silent. Every time someone speaks up and provides proof, it gets a little harder for manipulators to get away with their schemes. I thank Tony for his courage in coming forward with the sealed texts. I tell him I know it probably reopened wounds from his own divorce to get involved in my case. Tony brushes off my gratitude and says watching corrupt people face consequences is worth any discomfort. He hopes Jake and Lily recover quickly from their mother's actions. He mentions his own kids struggled after his divorce from Megan, but therapy helped them understand the situation wasn't their fault. He offers to talk anytime I need advice on helping kids process parental manipulation. We end the call, and I feel grateful for unexpected allies like Tony, who stepped up when I needed help most. 2 weeks pass, and Tyrone calls about the final custody hearing. Judge Caruso scheduled it for 6 weeks after the emergency hearing to give Bella time to complete her evaluation and submit recommendations. Tyrone wants to prepare me for testimony about the impact of Heather's allegations and my plans for the kids' future. We meet at his office the next afternoon and spend 2 hours going over potential questions. He coaches me on staying calm and factual, even if Heather's attorney tries to provoke me. He reminds me the judge already knows the truth, but wants to hear directly from me about how the false allegations affected our family. We practice answers about my relationship with Jake and Lily, their adjustment since coming to live with me, and my vision for their future. Tyrone emphasizes that the judge will appreciate a measured approach that prioritizes the children over revenge. The final hearing arrives on a cold morning 6 weeks after everything changed. I wear a suit and arrive at the courthouse early. Tyrone meets me outside and we review key points one last time. Inside the courtroom, I see Heather sitting with her new attorney at the other table. She looks thin and tired. Megan is not present since she's dealing with her own legal problems. Judge Caruso enters and we all stand. The hearing begins with Bella taking the stand to testify about her evaluation. She describes her sessions with Jake and Lily in detail. She explains how both children showed signs of coaching and parental alienation when she first met them. Jake admitted his mother practiced answers with him before therapy appointments with the previous doctor. Lily demonstrated confusion about what actually happened versus what she was told to say. Bella testifies that both children are now thriving in my custody based on her observations over the past 6 weeks. Their anxiety levels decreased significantly. Their school performance improved. Their relationship with me strengthened as they realized the things they were told about me weren't true. Bella recommends that I receive sole legal and physical custody, with supervised therapeutic visitation for Heather. She states clearly that the children need stability after months of manipulation and upheaval. Jacqueline Hooper testifies next as the guardian ad litem representing Jake and Lily's interests. She echoes Bella's recommendation and adds her own observations from meeting with the children and evaluating both homes. She tells the judge that the children's best interests clearly favor stability with me after everything they experienced. She notes that both Jake and Lily expressed feeling safer and happier since the custody change. Jake told her he doesn't have to worry about saying the right things anymore. Lily said she likes living with Daddy because nobody tells her what to feel. Jacqueline emphasizes that children need to trust their parents, and Heather destroyed that trust through systematic manipulation. Rebuilding will require extensive therapy and time. Heather's attorney stands to make his argument for shared custody. He starts talking about the importance of maternal bonds and how children need both parents. Judge Caruso interrupts him mid-sentence. She points out that his client fabricated serious criminal allegations and coached children to lie under oath. She asks what possible reason exists for rewarding that behavior with custody rights. The attorney stumbles through a response about rehabilitation and second chances. Judge Caruso cuts him off again and says second chances don't include unsupervised access to the children someone manipulated and traumatized. She asks if he has any evidence that contradicts the recommendations from both the therapist and guardian ad litem. He admits he does not. The judge dismisses his argument and calls a brief recess before issuing her ruling. I watch Judge Caruso return to the bench after the recess and take her seat. She looks at both attorneys and then directly at Heather before speaking. The judge says she has reviewed all the evidence, including the text messages between Heather and Megan, that prove the allegations were fabricated. She states that this court takes perjury extremely seriously, especially when children are used as pawns in adult conflicts. Judge Caruso awards me sole legal and physical custody of Jake and Lily effective immediately. Heather can have supervised visitation twice monthly with therapeutic oversight through a court-approved facility. The judge says Heather might get increased contact after completing court-ordered counseling and parenting classes, but that depends entirely on her progress and the therapist's recommendations. I feel my chest tighten as the words sink in. My kids are coming home. Heather makes a choking sound at her table and her attorney puts a hand on her arm. Judge Caruso continues speaking and orders Heather to pay my attorney fees in full. She also has to reimburse all costs I paid for the supervised visitation facility during the months of false allegations. Tyrone leans over and whispers that the amount will be substantial, probably close to $15,000 between legal fees and facility costs. Heather's lawyer stands and asks if his client can set up a payment plan since she doesn't have that kind of money available. Judge Caruso grants the request, but makes it clear that failure to pay will result in contempt charges. The judge sets a payment schedule of $500 monthly until the debt is satisfied. Heather nods without looking up from the table. Judge Caruso dismisses us, and I stand on shaky legs. Tyrone shakes my hand and tells me this is exactly the outcome we hoped for. I thank him for everything he did to get us here. We walk out of the courtroom, and I pull out my phone in the hallway. I need to tell Maurice immediately. Maurice answers on the second ring, and I tell him the judge gave me full custody. He whoops so loud I have to hold the phone away from my ear. Other people in the courthouse hallway turn to look at me. Maurice says this calls for a celebration and insists on taking me and the kids out to dinner tonight. I tell him that sounds perfect, and we agree to meet at their favorite pizza place at 6. I hang up and realize I need to pick up Jake and Lily from the school and tell them the news. Tyrone says goodbye and heads back to his office. I drive to the elementary school and park in the pickup line. My hands are still shaking on the steering wheel. The final bell rings and kids start pouring out of the building. I see Jake first, walking with his backpack hanging off one shoulder. Lily skips behind him holding a drawing she made in art class. They climb into the back seat and Lily immediately starts telling me about her day. I wait until they're both buckled in before turning around to face them. I tell them the judge made a decision today about where they're going to live. Jake's face goes serious and Lily stops talking mid-sentence. I say the judge decided they're going to live with me permanently from now on. Lily cheers and unbuckles her seatbelt to lean forward and hug me. Jake looks relieved and asks if this means no more court visits. I tell him yes, no more court, no more supervised visits. Just us being a normal family again. Jake smiles for the first time in weeks. I drive us home and let the kids have snacks while they do homework. Maurice calls again to confirm dinner plans and asks if he can bring something special for the kids. I tell him to surprise us. The afternoon passes quickly with the kids chattering about school and their friends. At 5:30, we get ready to leave for the restaurant. Maurice is already there when we arrive, standing by a table with balloons tied to the chairs. He's holding a white cake box. Jake and Lily run over to him and he gives them both high fives. The balloons say, "Welcome home" in silver letters. Maurice sets the cake box on the table and tells the kids to sit down. We order pizza and the kids are so excited about the balloons they can barely sit still. Maurice tells them he's proud of how brave they've been through everything. When the pizza arrives, we eat and talk about normal things like soccer tryouts and upcoming school projects. After we finish eating, Maurice opens the cake box. Inside is a chocolate cake with "Welcome Home" written in blue frosting. Jake and Lily's eyes get huge. The waiter brings plates and Maurice cuts big slices for everyone. Lily gets frosting on her nose and Jake laughs at her. I look at Maurice across the table and mouth "thank you." He nods and smiles. This is what I fought for during all those months of supervised visits and false accusations. These moments of my kids being happy and safe. The next week passes in a blur of adjusting to our new normal routine. On Wednesday morning, Tyrone calls to tell me Heather accepted a plea deal in the criminal case. She's pleading guilty to reduce charges to avoid going to trial. The prosecutor offered her 2 years probation, 200 hours of community service, and mandatory counseling sessions. She also gets a permanent criminal record that will show up on background checks for any future jobs. Tyrone says Heather's lawyer advised her to take the deal because going to trial would likely result in jail time. I ask what happens with Megan, and Tyrone says she's getting a similar offer. Megan's role in the conspiracy was significant since she testified falsely as a character witness. The district attorney wants both of them to face consequences but isn't pushing for prison time since the truth came out before any permanent damage was done to my custody rights. I thank Tyrone for the update and hang up. Part of me wishes they faced harsher punishment, but mostly I'm just relieved it's over. That afternoon, Freya calls and tells me she spoke with Megan yesterday. Apparently Megan and Heather's relationship is falling apart now that everything came to light. Megan is blaming Heather for dragging her into the scheme and ruining her reputation. Freya says Megan claims she only went along with it because Heather begged her, and she felt obligated as her sister. I don't have much sympathy for Megan since she actively coached Heather on how to lie more convincingly. Freya agrees that both her daughters made terrible choices, and she's struggling to understand how they could do something so cruel. She asks if she can still see Jake and Lily regularly, and I tell her of course. The kids love their grandmother, and she's been nothing but supportive since learning the truth. We make plans for her to come over this weekend for lunch. On Saturday morning, I take Jake and Lily to sign up for activities they've been wanting to try. Jake wants to play soccer, and Lily wants to take dance classes. We go to the community center and fill out registration forms. Jake picks a team that practices on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. Lily chooses a ballet class that meets Wednesday evenings. Watching them get excited about normal kid activities makes everything we went through feel worth it. For months, Heather poisoned their childhood with lies and manipulation. Now they get to just be kids again without worrying about saying the right things or pleasing their mother. Jake runs around the soccer field during his first practice, and I can see the stress melting off him. Lily twirls in her new ballet shoes and giggles when she almost falls over. These are the moments Heather tried to steal from us. The following Tuesday, I take both kids to see Bella for their regular therapy session. She meets with Jake first while Lily and I wait in the lobby. After 40 minutes, Jake comes out and Lily goes in. When both sessions are done, Bella asks if she can speak with me privately. The kids go play with toys in the corner while Bella and I sit in her office. She tells me both children are making excellent progress in processing everything that happened. Jake is developing healthy skepticism about believing everything adults tell him without questioning it. Lily is learning to trust her own memories and feelings instead of letting others tell her what she experienced. Bella says the parental alienation could have caused lasting damage if it had continued much longer, but we caught it in time. She recommends continuing weekly sessions for at least 6 more months to ensure they fully work through the trauma. I agree immediately. Whatever they need to heal, I'll make it happen. 3 months after the final custody ruling, Jake brings up Heather during dinner one night. He sets down his fork and tells me he's angry at his mom for lying and making everything so hard. His voice cracks a little when he talks. I put down my own fork and tell him it's completely okay to feel angry about what she did. What happened wasn't fair to him or Lily, and he has every right to be upset about it. Jake asks why she would do something like that if she loved them. I take a breath before answering. I tell him sometimes people make really bad choices when they want something badly enough, and his mom wanted to start a new life so much that she forgot to think about how her choices would hurt other people. I say that doesn't make it okay, but it's the only explanation I have. Jake nods slowly. I tell him he should talk about these feelings with Bella in therapy instead of keeping them inside where they'll just grow bigger and more painful. He agrees and goes back to eating. Lily looks between us with worried eyes and asks if Jake is okay. He tells his sister he's fine, just thinking about stuff. I reach over and squeeze both their hands. We're going to get through this together, one day at a time. A few days later, Lily climbs into my lap while I'm reading on the couch and asks when Mommy will be able to take them places again like she used to. Her voice is small and uncertain, like she's worried about asking. I set down my book and pull her close, trying to find the right words that are honest without being harsh. I tell her that Mommy needs to work on herself first, that she has to show the judge she's ready to be a good mom again. Lily's face scrunches up as she thinks about this. She asks what Mommy needs to work on, and I explain that adults sometimes make really bad choices and have to learn from their mistakes before things can go back to normal. I say the judge will decide about changes to visits when Mommy shows she's ready, that it's not up to me or her. Lily seems to accept this answer and goes back to playing with her dolls on the floor. Jake overhears from the kitchen where he's doing homework and doesn't say anything, but I can see his shoulders relax a little. Over the next few weeks, Heather completes her court-ordered parenting classes, and her attorney files a motion requesting increased visitation. Tyrone calls to let me know it's coming and says Judge Caruso will review Bella's reports on the supervised visits before making any decisions. I feel my stomach tighten at the thought of Heather getting more time with the kids, but I trust the judge to make the right call. 2 weeks after the motion is filed, Judge Caruso grants one additional monthly visit, still with therapeutic oversight from Bella. The order arrives in the mail, and I read it 3 times to make sure I understand all the conditions. Heather has to continue her counseling, maintain stable housing, and follow all of Bella's recommendations during visits. Any violation means immediate return to the previous schedule. The first extended visit happens on a Saturday morning at the same neutral location we've been using. I drop Jake and Lily off, and Bella meets them at the door. She gives me a reassuring nod before taking them inside where Heather is waiting. I sit in my car for a few minutes, fighting the urge to go back inside and watch through the observation window. Instead, I drive to the coffee shop down the street and try to distract myself with work emails on my phone. 3 hours later, I return to pick them up. Bella walks out with the kids and tells me the visit went better than previous ones. Heather focused on the kids instead of making excuses about what happened, played games with them, and asked about their activities at the school. Jake stayed guarded the whole time, keeping physical distance from his mother and giving short answers to her questions. But Lily seemed cautiously willing to rebuild some connection, laughing at Heather's jokes and showing her a drawing she made in art class. On the drive home, Lily chatters about the visit while Jake stares out the window silently. A week later, Maurice shows up at my apartment with takeout and beer. He settles onto my couch and tells me it's time I start dating again, that moving forward with my life doesn't mean forgetting what happened. I laugh and say I'm not ready, that Maurice shakes his head and points out that Jake and Lily are doing great, that I'm allowed to have a life outside of being their dad. He reminds me that I'm only 34 and shouldn't let Heather's actions stop me from finding happiness. I argue that introducing anyone to the kids right now would be too much upheaval after everything they've been through. Maurice agrees but says I can date without bringing people around the kids immediately. He pulls out his phone and shows me a dating app, insisting I at least create a profile. I reluctantly agree and spend the next hour setting up an account while Maurice provides commentary on my photo choices. By the end of the night, I have a profile and 3 matches waiting. I feel nervous but also excited about the possibility of meeting someone new. 4 months after gaining custody, my phone starts buzzing with messages from people I haven't heard from in over a year. The first one is from Craig, who used to be in my weekly basketball league. He sends a long apology about believing Heather's lies and says he should have given me the benefit of the doubt. I stare at the message for a while before responding that I appreciate the apology. Over the next few days, more messages arrive from other friends who disappeared during the allegations. Some I'm willing to forgive because I understand how convincing Heather's performance was, how she manipulated everyone around her. Others I keep at a distance because their abandonment hurt too much, because they didn't even ask for my side of the story before cutting me off completely. Sarah, who was my closest friend from college, calls and cries on the phone about how sorry she is. I tell her I forgive her but need time before we can go back to how things were. She understands and says she'll wait as long as it takes. One Tuesday afternoon, Jake's teacher calls my cell while I'm at work. My heart jumps thinking something is wrong, but her voice sounds happy when I answer. She tells me Jake wrote an essay about honesty and truth that brought her to tears. She asks if she can read part of it to me over the phone, and I say yes while walking to an empty conference room for privacy. She reads Jake's words about learning that even people you love can lie and how important it is to tell the truth even when it's hard. He wrote about how lies hurt people and make everything confusing, and how he wants to always be honest so nobody feels the way he felt. The teacher's voice cracks as she finishes reading, and I have to wipe my eyes before I can respond. I thank her for calling and tell her how proud I am of Jake for processing his feelings in such a healthy way. She says he's a remarkable kid, and that I'm clearly doing something right as his father. That weekend, Freya comes over for lunch like she does most Saturdays now. She brings homemade lasagna and garlic bread, and the kids help her set the table. I watch her interact with Jake and Lily, and feel grateful they have a grandmother who chose truth over blind loyalty to her daughter. After lunch, while the kids are playing outside, Freya tells me that Heather is slowly accepting responsibility for what she did. She says the process is painful and incomplete, that Heather still makes excuses sometimes but is starting to understand the damage she caused. Freya admits she doesn't know if Heather will ever fully own her actions, but she's seeing small signs of growth. I tell Freya I hope that's true for the kids' sake, that they deserve a mother who can acknowledge her mistakes and work to be better. 6 months after the emergency hearing, I sit on my back porch one evening after putting Jake and Lily to bed and think about how far we've come as a family. The house is quiet except for the sound of crickets and distant traffic. Jake and Lily are happy, healthy kids who are learning to trust again. They laugh more now, fight over normal sibling stuff, and talk about their future without the weight of adult problems crushing them. I've rebuilt my life from the ruins of Heather's false accusations. I have my kids, a stable job, friends who stuck by me or came back, and even a few promising dates with someone I met through the app Maurice convinced me to try. The legal bills are still painful and will take years to pay off completely. But we have what matters most. Life isn't perfect, and probably never will be. The kids still have complicated feelings about their mom, asking questions I don't always know how to answer. Jake sometimes gets quiet and withdrawn when he's processing something about what happened. Lily has nightmares occasionally where she wakes up scared and needs me to sit with her until she falls back asleep. I still deal with occasional anxiety about the system that almost destroyed my family, jumping every time my phone rings with an unknown number or when official-looking mail arrives. Sometimes I see Heather's car in town and my chest tightens until I remember she can't take them from me anymore. But we're together. We're safe, and we're moving forward one day at a time. That's everything I fought for when Heather tried to take it all away with her lies and manipulation. We survived the worst thing that could have happened to us, and we came out the other side still standing.